Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Hermit, making it hour by hour, day by day. This is going to be the 29th Lenten Uplift, and I hope it's considered an uplift. Scripture always is. Has to do with reliance on Christ and Christ as light. There's just more things in the world that just come up. As narrow as my life is as cocooned as I am, I noticed and then inquired of the family member of this person. They said a new champ it was with this pickleball thing. And it was in the female division, and I couldn't see a female who they were talking about. Well, as you can imagine, someone who either is a male and saying a female, identify as a female, I guess they say, or is a female and has taken so much testosterone and other body altering chemicals that even for the person's heritage, culture, nationality, I guess you would say race, the body is far more bulked up than what Asian males are. And of course, one in the women's division. And I found out that was one that the family member had lost to in doubles, mixed doubles. So it was like a woman and a man playing against two men, in essence, even though the one identifies as a female and maybe was born as a female. You wouldn't know it to see. And of course, the advantage in a sport like pickleball, it's a team sport, and the person won outright in singles. There'd be no way a woman playing against that could win, no matter how good. Just the strength and the endurance of a man in pickleball compared to a woman is, at that level anyway, at the pro level, is not ever going to be equivalent. So I thought, oh, here we go. And the family, we were texting back and forth last night a little bit. And the family member is always so really level-headed. I tend to grieve over things in the world. But it's true. She says there's nothing I can do about it. Nothing that can be done about it. And I had read online about the person and found that someone in a big tournament in the fall had a different league or whatever. It was a big thing. Had dared even just complain about having to play against that situation. Male. As if male, anyway. Equivalent to male. Whatever was the original gender. And immediately got disqualified, not just from the one event, but from the whole tournament. Disqualified just for bringing it, complaining, quietly saying, this doesn't seem fair. So, and I noticed the person had gone to different countries to try to play. Australia, England, and the U.S., and evidently in its home country of China, didn't get anywhere at all, so left, and is now back in the U.S. With this one league that you don't have to have a contract, I guess, to play in. But so things will change. and how it's hard to keep hope. Imagine if you're a single person and that's your income, being a pro player, and you spend all that money flying and your fees to enter into a tournament, your hotel, your food, uh, you know, have to have a job where you live that is off and on, that you can, teaching lessons or things that you can rearrange your schedule to go to these tournaments, because the tournaments are important to be in professionally and also income wise if you're good. And then to realize that, plus the person used a hot paddle. They don't know how the person got it by, but did maybe whoever was challenging, screening the paddles, didn't want to say a peep, because if you do, they can say, sex discrimination, lawsuit, disqualify, lose your job. It's gotten to that point in this country anyway. And I'd read that in England, when the person played there, that they bent over backwards because they had known what had happened earlier in this other tournament in the U.S. I think it was the U.S. Open. And how this one person had been disqualified from everything. Couldn't play at all. And because of just making a comment. So they bent over backwards to treat this person like royalty. And that's, people are scared. So they just do whatever so that they don't get sued or eliminated or lose their jobs. It's real. And I've noticed that a lot of transgenders in sports, they never going to play against men. Women don't want to transgender men to play against men, of course. They wouldn't have a chance against a biological male. But the biological males are women who are so loaded on hormones, male hormones, that you wouldn't recognize their legs as anything other than men, or their necks, or their shoulders, or their facial hair, and all of that. And the strength, just the body strength. And so it's, what are you going to do? There's nothing anyone can do. Now, I think this president in this country has executive order, but I think that's protecting. I think it should be for any sport, but it really mainly, I think, only has power over students in schools, because they can cut funding if the state governors or whatever don't cooperate, or schools don't. They can go at it that way. There has to be some kind of consequence. But in adult leagues that are open to anyone to enter, then they're sort of stuck. And but imagine how hard it would be if that's your income and you were previously meddling, making your income that way, and love it, love competing, love the sport, love, a big sort of a pioneer in the sport, and then to have these things start happening. The world. And there's a hermit, a transgender hermit, diocese hermit, of course, who, because there would be no benefit to someone to be a traditional historic hermit and be transgender, because there would be no publicity in it. You're hidden, you're not, but this one got a bishop to approve him. It was a her who transgendered into male, and had major physical vice that you could see was a big problem that should have eliminated the person, plus the gender dysphoria, the confusion on their sex, should have been something that they would have said, well, you need to, deal with this first before you can be a hermit. But no, this bishop wanted to push that envelope with the U.S. bishop, so took the person right in, even though the person's career does not at all fit in with hermit life. Being in the theater, an actor or actress, whichever gender, what is the person? Was a female and became a male. So actor now. And, that's people, that's out there, but wears a habit, Franciscan-looking habit, has stubble, and just amazing what all. And within a few months of being approved as a hermit, consecrated in the Catholic Church in the United States, Pope Francis had the person come over for a private audience. A big deal. Oh, wow, we're going to show how embracing we are. And a hermit wouldn't ordinarily, especially one that's just been a hermit for 3 or 4 months or so, 6 months at most, when went to Rome, to have this private audience, like a rock star, head of state or something. Just goodness sakes. Had not even lived the hermit life long enough to even know if it was going to make it. And, but obviously will if the bishop approved and didn't care. The person had gone to several bishops, different dioceses around the country trying to get in. And but what can you do about it? Nothing. We are in an age, even in churches, and not just Catholic. The Methodists have split over those who aren't following Scripture and Christ's teachings, but want to be trendy and accepted publicly, be popular, go with the societal mayhem and confusion, all in the name of love, Well, you can be loving, but there are still standards. Even in hermit life, there are still standards, even based on tradition and historic and saint hermits, that the traditions, the precedents that have been set for 2,000 years of hermit life. But it can just all get tossed out, and people do what they want. Redesign the hermit life. Even redesign what is the narrow path. Make it what we want. And say, well, you're not loving if you don't embrace. I don't know why Francis would do that, other than wanted to get his name out there more, or feel like he was trendy and ultra-liberal. So it didn't stop to think that a hermit shouldn't be going for anything like that or be in a public situation. Of course, the news, the news articles were written, and it's a big deal. And the person immediately after being approved went to the press, had a press conference. First transgender hermit in the Catholic Church, no big deal. Breaking the barriers. The LGBTQ plus whatever all the alphabet is. Breaking the barriers. And I could dress up as a binary, take up some binary name. What could I call myself? Paper or something, and dress in paper and say, I'm paper. I identify as paper. Or Bible, could call myself Bible. Scripture. And put scripture pages all over my body. And relate like that. Do that, just be a binary person and get all kinds of news publicity. And, we can do any crazy thing we want to do. Isn't it something? But no, we have to make a choice. As the person said last night, what can I do about it? Can't really do anything about these topsy-turvy, do what you want, create your own rules, create your own way, get your own publicity for being more outlandish than the last person, and win at any cost. Don't bother even to dress like a woman. They don't bother anymore. Why? Why go to that bother? They can get in and win and take the money, take the prize, get the attention, the titles, do what they want with Catholicism, with the church, with the scriptures, twist them around, and then attack other people if they stand firm for the narrow pathway, be called extremist or something. So it's a matter of following Christ now. Living for Christ, living the scriptures, and let a lot of the other go. Live for God, live for the scriptures, keep truth, beauty, and goodness alive in our own lives. That's what we can do. Stay clear of groups or situations that are run amok with what is not scripturally truth, beauty, or goodness. So here's today's. This was perfect for these aspects. It's from John 8:12 through 20. Hi, mercy. I feel so guilty about my little doggies and think they're so sad and they don't get enough attention. And I realize they have a pretty good life. They do, don't they, Mercy, huh? Yeah. If I take my hand off rubbing her leg and stuff or her head, she paws at me. So, Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Whoever follows Jesus. So the Pharisees said to him, You testify on your own behalf, so your testimony cannot be verified. Jesus answered and said to them, Even if I do testify on my own behalf, my testimony can be verified, because I know where I came from and where I am going. But you do not know where I come from or where I am going. You judge by appearances, but I do not judge anyone. Well, here I've been. I don't know if it's appearances. I guess that's what caught my attention. They said the new champion of the women's singles, and it was a man. But the person identifies as a woman, either is a woman and wants to be a man, so it's made the body like a man, to win, to get money and attention, notice, publicity. So I don't know, is that judgment or is that discerning? And at first it was just me trying to figure out, is this headline wrong or what's going on here? Then, yes, the transgender, or I don't know if the person's transgender or not, whatever. So even if I should judge, this is Jesus talking, my judgment is valid because I am not alone, but it is I and the Father who sent me. I testify on my behalf, and so does the Father who sent me. Well, I guess we really need to get so one with the Father, so close with the Father, so sure in the Scriptures ourselves, so in Christ, that it's not just I alone who is the judgment or making these comments or testifying, but it's Christ in us who gives us the assurance of what is truth, what is beauty, what is goodness. Even in your law it is written that the testimony of two men can be verified. I testify on my behalf, and so does the Father who sent me. So they said to him, to Jesus, they said, Where is your Father? Jesus answered, You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. We've got to get to know Jesus and thereby know the Father. Jesus is Father God. Jesus spoke these words while teaching in the treasury in the temple area. No one arrested him because his hour had not yet come. But Jesus is the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So, when we come up into situations, such as I mentioned, a couple of situations, and we read about the transgender or these young guys who are just joining the girls' teams in their high schools or colleges and saying, but I identify as a woman. They don't even bother taking their hormones or dressing up as females anymore. They don't have to. They just testify, I am a woman, and I'm going to play in this sport. One of them I read the other day, I think it was track. He had come in last in his 3rd division boys in high school, and then he broke all records and came in first in the girls' team, top-level girls' team in his high school. So, yeah, and he didn't bother dressing in a skirt or trying to look like a girl, didn't grow his hair long, just went as he was, really, a boy, and said he was a girl, that he identified. And they needed to call him. He took a girl's name and he won. And he set a huge record that no girl will ever be able to beat. It's there. And this kid went from being a loser in the bottom of the boys' division to a heralded winner in the girls' division. And got his trophy. People are just fine with all this anymore. They just do what they want. They're not following the light of Christ. They don't know God. They don't know Christ. And they've lost truth, beauty, and goodness. They're not on the holy, narrow pathway. They're on the track team or the other sports teams or the swim team or whatever. Or even in positions where they got in because they were different and they were going to get sued if they showed any discrimination, whether they really showed it or not. The person could say they're discriminating against me because I'm transgender or I'm binary or I'm this or that. So, where's your Father? Jesus answered, You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know also my Father. We've got to learn who is Christ and know him intimately. We've got to know the holy narrow pathway and live it Truth, beauty, and goodness. What is truth? And for that, we have to discern it. And in a way, judge. We weigh. We weigh what the testimony is. The visual and the factual, body mass index, weight, height, bone structure, beefed up bodies, shoulders, legs, power, strength, might. And then in the Christian life, I don't know really what the point was of the person. Well, they were gender confused, evidently, and wanted this, and they had their press conference after the bishop approved them to be a hermit in the Catholic Church, consecrated diocese hermit, and announced to the world, I'm the first transgender hermit in the Catholic Church, broken the barriers. And then, of course, the news media called the news media together, and the LGBTQ movement was there, and if anything dare happens to that person, if they're removed from being a consecrated Catholic diocese hermit, then they're going to get sued. And there's going to be rebellion and a lot of publicity and what do they call them? The different groups that come and they protest. There'll be protests. There's a big group there, even for his announcement or her announcement. I guess, no, him. I forget her original name, but he goes by Christian. Chose the name Christian. That's sort of different, isn't it? Maybe a little intentional, perhaps. So, hunt and choose so you can get in. So, yeah, that another reason why when people say, I want to become a hermit, and how do you do it? I say, just leave the diocese hermit stuff alone for a couple 100 years. See if they get it sorted out. Because the sports world, everything's being thrown on its head as far as competitions and sexual identities and confusions, and it doesn't make any sense that anyone would be approved to represent the church in a religious capacity if they are confused about their own birth, if they don't know what they were born as. They don't want to be something else. They don't want to be female or male or whatever they were born. So it's something to be worked out. Mercy. You want to get in the, you want to go look in there? Or you just want to be petted? I was thinking, animals know. Mercy, are we going to change your gender? Huh? You're going to change your personality too and change your body size and become a pit bull, big old strong pit bull. How about that? Become an attack dog. No, she knows what she is. So, the light, Lord, you are the light. Here is a hymn, actually it's a hymn, by Symeon the New Theologian, 10th century for the most part, born in around 949, died in 1022. Greek monk, saint of the Orthodox churches. I just call him a saint. Back then, the schism had not happened yet anyway, but the Eastern churches made him a saint later. But I don't go for the divisions of people. The Eastern church has so much richness to offer. that I'm not going to personally be tied by their fussing of the 11th century, around 1031 or so, 1030. A big fuss of each, the Western Church and the Eastern Church felt that their man was the true pope. So the true leader. I think by then they called him pope. Maybe, or around that time. But then the Eastern Church calls it something different. Ultramandrite or something like that. Some other type of name. Supreme Mandrite, or I'll have to look it up. Among men, I guess I don't need to. Doesn't matter. But they give a different title, and the Western Church calls it a pope. The position that Peter held and all the other apostles that were the lead apostles, the head apostle. Jesus knew that there would need to be someone in charge, someone who would be the leader, because we humans fuss too much with each other and divisions happen. Well, there it did happen then. The East and the West. They each decided that their person was the true one. And obviously there weren't two to keep it together, so they just split apart. And each, the East and the Western churches then had their own popes. So that was the Great Schism. But as far as the people and their writings and their brilliance and their holiness, anyone who's on the holy narrow pathway and has devoted their lives and in truth, beauty, and goodness, that has been proven over the centuries, good enough for me, who's very imperfect, unproven, still very much in transition, a student in soul school, and the jury's still out on me by far. Many things about me that need still to be developed and learned, and just discipline alone. Just the discipline to handle higher and higher amounts of pain on lower level pain meds. That's a discipline right there. And to recognize when I'm having a dark night of the soul or of the spirit. They're slightly different. I didn't distinguish that. But the dark night of the spirit is deeper. The dark night of the soul is more with externals. But the dark night of the spirit goes deep within, a darkness. That's what I was in yesterday and Saturday some. But by yesterday it was gotten very dark. Dark night of the spirit. And to recognize that I'm in that. But it's like you're just in a fog. So I don't recognize it until later. Oh, this is what it is. And then it dispels. Once we can identify these things, often it helps us dispel it or handle it better. And that's the same when I get into severe pain. Often I don't recognize just how severe of a quandary I'm in, and that I'm not handling it. My kids used to tell me, you need to take medicine, Mom. Your pain's getting bad. We can tell. But I couldn't tell until, felt it, that I was getting very grumpy or very out of sorts, or couldn't remember things or think of things clearly at all, couldn't function. So it's good for us to know Christ. First of all, know the light, Christ the light of the world, intimately. Know the scriptures so we can, and don't twist them around to fit society or cultures or what people want to do or what we want. The first reading today is from Daniel, the beautiful, lovely, pure Susannah, who was married to an older man, very important man, and these elders would come and meet with him, and two of them developed a lust for his beautiful wife. They had children, she had lovely family, her own parents and relatives, but these men tricked her. Many of you know this from Daniel. And blackmailed her, put her in a position that if she didn't agree to let them have sex with her, that they would ruin her and she would be killed because of it. But she decided that she would rather follow God's law and remain pure and chaste with her husband, not let these men rape her, and let them destroy her then. She knew she was caught in this quandary because she had no witnesses and they had each other and they were evil. And that's how we often feel when we're up against things that are wrong. Well, what can we do about it? But do right ourselves and keep going. Like the family members, nothing I can do about it. And yeah, that's who we lost to. And plus the person had used a hot paddle. As I mentioned, an illegal paddle that gives an undue advantage. And as I say, likely the person screening the paddles didn't want to call out this one person for fear of being labeled what would it be? Sexual, illegal sexual bias or something could have been called. They're just saying this because I'm this way. And, people get caught. They get trapped. What can they do then? But in that case, no. But it's hard to lose your job or to have a lawsuit against you. That's why I moved from my beautiful gardens and perfect little end-of-life place that I could afford and was all finished and everything in its place. My garden's all done, but my neighbors were going to cause me more troubles. And it would be my word against theirs. And there were 3 adults in their household and one of me. And no one wanted to go to court with me except my one daughter who was there and who had witnessed things. But no one else did who had witnessed things because they didn't want these creepy people coming after them. So it's how, so I did what I had to do. Moved across country, lost everything, lost money on the house, dug up all the gardens, sold what I could, gifted some of the stuff, lost a lot of it, hauled a lot of it with me. We just do the best and we try to stay with what's right and best and good. And so, fortunately for Susannah, in the scriptures, Old Testament, this young prophet Daniel spoke up. Can't have anything to do with the murder of this woman, the killing of her. It's not just. This hasn't been justly examined, and we haven't gotten proper testimony from these two. So he separated the two and gave them a question, and they couldn't answer with the same answer, so they knew they were lying then. Saved her life. One person who stood up for truth, beauty, and goodness. This young man, Daniel. So he knew the Lord intimately. He knew right from wrong, and he stuck with it. But he was in a position that he wasn't a direct party, so he wasn't going to have any job ruined or anything by speaking up. Susannah had no one else to really help her. No one else was there. But God helped her, and that's what we have to count on, ultimately. And that's what I texted back to the family member. She said, there's nothing I can do about any of it. And I wrote back, I said, only God can do anything about this situation in the world now. It's all over the world. Of people out. I mean, I'm sure there are some people who have gender dysphoria and are confused, convinced that they aren't really what they were born, or envy the other sex and want to be that sex and want attention. Some people are sick that way. They want attention, and they'll do it in any way possible. There's people who murder, serial killers, who will murder for attention. See their names in the paper, or that their crimes in the paper, and get a thrill out of realizing they've gotten away with it. And even when they haven't, they're thrilled to be caught because it's even more publicity. They're the greatest serial killer this area's ever known, or things like that. Oh, wow. Killed the most people. So, and they can even be, looked up to in prison. They become chief honcho of the killers. So, none of it's truth, beauty, or goodness. And I hope we don't get to the point that we think killing is okay, but who knows? Well, they already do in instances. Choose right to die. Let me kill myself. Have a doctor approve of it, or have him be able to kill me. And I think phony on that right to die thing. If you really want to die, just do it yourself. But no, they want to put all the blame on someone else and have it be justified and have all that attention. Articles in the paper. We don't have papers anymore. Online. So-and-so is, getting a doctor. The doctor's allowed to kill them. Give them their sleeping draught or whatever. Their final dose is so strong that will kill them. And they've gone through various hurdles to get to that point. It can get to it's just grievous if we stop to think, and it should be grievous to us all of these things, but it must not stymie us. It should spur us on to get to know Christ so well and his word so well that we will never be confused on right from wrong. And if we start having confusion on what sex we are, we'll go get help on our own. Or we'll tough it out and deal with it psychologically. There have been many instances now of young people who were convinced and also encouraged by others. No, you're really a boy, or you're really a girl. And some of them have even convinced their parents to let them have surgeries or damaging hormone treatments for boy or girl, either one. And then a couple of years later, they realize, well, no, this isn't good. This isn't what I am. I wished I hadn't done that. And some of these young people are speaking out, of the dangers of it and how it ruined their bodies. Won't ever be able to have a baby, or won't ever be able to nurse their baby, or won't ever be able to create new life. Had their penises removed. So, or had so many hormones that it ruined their ability to produce semen. So this is very important. A friend had said, regarding Catholicism, she left. She's angry over her first husband, who was an alcoholic and was Catholic, and she blamed everything then on that. The Catholic Church was awful because he was not a good person. Was a sinner, and true he was, and a messed up person. But she says, oh, and all those old people, those things from the past, those different ones who wrote things and all, it's so boring. There's no point in it at all. Well, I find lots of point. I like to read about what, like Symeon the New Theologian wrote, this Greek monk, saint of the Orthodox churches. And saint to me, I don't care if he's in the Eastern Church or the Western Church. He's holy, and he has great insights, he's close to God. So he wrote this hymn, 18. And it's not the hymn in the sense that we think of, with stanzas and rhyming lines, but it's yet a hymn, a song he wrote to God. Who, Lord, can speak of you? Your works, your glory, and your knowledge are utterly incomprehensible and ungraspable. Yet we have hope, we possess faith, and we know the love you have given us, boundless, inexpressible, and indescribable. It is light, inaccessible light, the light that acts in all. For what does this light not do, and what is it not? It is charm and joy, sweetness and peace, mercy without number, abyss of compassion, invisible. It is seen. I like that play. Light is invisible, light is seen. And it is understood without being able to contain it. Untouchable, intangible. There's another opposite there. Untouchable, intangible. It can be grasped by my mind. When I possess it, I do not notice it. This is light. I see it only when it departs. I rush to seize it, and it flies away entirely. I do not know what to do, and I am consumed. I learn to ask and seek with tears in great humility, and not to consider as possible what transcends nature, nor as the effect of my power or human effort what comes from the compassion of God and his infinite mercy. Light invites silence and teaches almighty humility. When, therefore, I acquire light and become humble, from that moment on, light too remains with me inseparably, unites itself to me, and enlightens me. It looks at me, and I look at it. It is in my heart, and it is found in heaven. Light reveals the scriptures to me, brings me knowledge, and teaches me mysteries I cannot express. So that's light. He was examining light. Christ, light. He called it, you are light, Lord. Christ is light. And we need to stay with the light and examine the light. Understand Christ as light and all that Christ says, how he lived, how he is now, how he interacts with us now from heaven, and in us, within us, his love. His love is light, and it's inside us all the time, so that when we do discern things or make intelligent judgment calls, it's from a point of love that we do so. A loving concern for society, for cultures, for the world, for people out there in it. Me as a hermit, I can't do all the things. I'm not out there. I won't ever have any trouble with competition from people who decide they want to be male playing against a female. But out of love and compassion for those who are in those situations. And it doesn't even have to be that their income relies on it. It's their career. They can just be sweet children, high schoolers or college kids whose scholarships depend on them doing well. They were planning on getting a sports scholarship for college or to keep their scholarship in college. And here comes along a man saying he's a woman and on the team and wins and gets all the awards, ruins the previous records of the women. So it's a tangible problem. Very tangible problem. And they don't even bother being castrated. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to take any hormone treatments. They just say, I identify as a woman. And this is my name now. And you don't dare not call them a her or a she. Or if they want to say that they are binaries, and you have to call them an it or them or those or they instead of a male or female. They want to be not male or female. Something even more unique, more attention getting. And they don't necessarily realize all of these psychological attributes, and you don't dare suggest it. There's laws against parents taking their children to a psychologist if they have gender dysphoria at young ages. Some states have those laws. Not allowed to try to get your child psychological help. So we're in it thick in our time period. And part of my place is to keep clear on what is light, Christ, what's his law, and by that, not the written law, but his law of life, love, truth, beauty, goodness, his light, how he lived, how he spoke, what he taught, and how he is now even. He's never changing. God, it never changes. People say, well, it's different now. Things change. Light, Christ the light, never changes. Truth never changes. Beauty, goodness never changes. What happened to Susannah back, thousands and hundreds of years before Christ happens today to people. Girls groomed or young boys groomed. It works both ways now. It's not just women being raped or being trapped into terrible situations where they'll be ruined or kidnapped or turn into sex slaves, even by their own parents. Things like, there's just any number of atrocities out there going on. But we've got to stay with the light of Christ, and this is the uplift part. We can pray, and we can stand firm in right over wrong. And as I remembered the family member, well, you do have control over your facility that there's 3 people who are involved in it. And she's a leader of it. And she has control over the atmosphere and the goals. They want it to be a loving, family type interactions with people. That competition does not take over the beauty and the peacefulness and the love and enjoyment that everyone has there, playing with one another. They work out differences. They don't overcharge. It's tough. It's not really making money for other than the people who invested. They have to pay them. But, it's not clearing any extra yet at all. because they keep it fair, just prices, so that people, but it's all full, waiting list to get in, but it has a reputation for being a delightful environment to be in, to play a sport, to get good exercise, to take lessons, to have clinics or different programs, different tournaments they run. But it's not a cutthroat kind of a thing. And so they thus far haven't had troubles of ugliness coming in and social matters of the world disrupting, or angry or hateful things going on. So it's, but it takes a group to decide they want that, to stay focused on, whether they say it or not, they are living with Christ as light, as the model. And that's what each of us can do in our own places, with our own families. No matter how others in the family act, we can have ourselves. And if we don't have that much interaction or influence, we always have work to do in knowing God more and more, learning all about Christ and becoming intimate with him, always remembering we've got his love in us, except when we have the dark nights of the soul or the spirit. And then God understands, because he withdraws light. And that strengthens our faith and our seeking and desiring Christ and light all the more then. And then after God realizes, that we're learning, that we're straining, and our faith is growing, we're holding firm, we still have love, more light flows in then. And we understand, this was a dark night of the soul or a dark night of the spirit. I was in a spiritual doldrum. And then light floods for a while. So the uplift is Christ is light, and nothing can ever stop us from being in his light and learning more about him and enjoying people from the past. It's delightful to realize they had the same trials that we have, the same feelings, the same issues, just with different externals in a different time period. And it's fascinating to understand their time periods. And in some ways, a lot harder to live in those time periods. I often think of people with back pain, even 50 years ago, 100 years ago. They had bourbon and they had a gun and pulling their hair out. It's said a lot of women in insane asylums, especially women, were there. They had injured their backs doing laundry over, heavy work, laundry, over those scrubbing boards, pulled things in their back or discs out, terrible pain, or they had migraine headaches with no medication for it. And they went crazy from the pain, literally, tangibly crazy. But people thought they were mentally ill. Well, they ended up being, because, shooting ourselves isn't a viable solution scripturally. But I never fault anyone, especially people in the past who blew their brains out because their pain got so bad. Head pain or neck pain, they couldn't take it anymore. So give people a lot of grace. I do, for their issues. And I give a lot of grace for people who do have gender dysphoria. When I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, it was very rare to have. I remember one girl in our town who was more masculine acting and dressed as a boy, or jeans and things when we all wore skirts and things. When she was out of school, I think she had to. When she was in school, we had rules. Had to wear skirts, dresses and skirts to school, up to, I think, maybe by the time I was in high school in 64 in our town, we could finally, they'd have slack day. You could wear slacks, couldn't be jeans, to be nice slacks. But, anyway, I think it's promoted more now, and it's put in people's minds more now, or there's more dysfunction now, more psychological dysphoria now, perhaps. Not sure what all, or combination of it all. But it still isn't. In 1986, the DSM-R was officially changed. They took same-sex out as a psychological disorder, and they did it strictly because of politics. Became a political issue, and that's the reality. Wasn't because it was no longer a disorder, a sexual disorder. So we have to, we can ignore truth, but we can't say much about it unless we want to have unnecessary lawsuits. Why bother? As I say, no one can take us away from Christ within, or from truth, beauty, and goodness in our own little sphere, our own group. And when we're out in the world, I'm assuming people caught up do like my family member. Just got to keep going. Nothing to do about it. When it gets to the point where it is not worth paying the fees and the flights and the hotels, and not do the tournaments anymore. I don't know. Or just keep going and hope you don't run into that one person. Ultimately will at the top, because that person's going to end up in the finals in women's always. So from now on, unless God intervenes in some way, and that's always a possibility. So that's the world. And or until laws change, or in adult leagues or things like that. So it's, the rest of us pray and grieve for the topsy-turvy, clouded light, the confusion of light and darkness that has taken over with people. And we can feel great compassion for those who, for whatever reason, want to win at all costs. It can happen without having anything to do with gender changes like that. People do all kinds of things to win at all costs, or to get their name out there, or to be for their egos or whatever psychological issues they've got, pride and all. So that's nothing new, is it? Like the two old men who lust got in their way, and they were willing to do anything, and they retaliated, but they lost. God intervened, And sometimes God does, and sometimes God allows situations to go on. We don't understand why, but the person who perseveres and endures, just like dealing with a headache for 40 and a half years, which is my situation. It's always there, but I'm really used to it, except for when it goes up to worse. And then I have to get used to that. And or my other pain, and I think I'm through the transition now of I'm not as in the kind of shock I was of just how much I've declined and how worn out and weak I am, or how bad it hurts when I stand up for even 10 minutes trying to do something. So it's a lot of it's praying for light from Christ to adjust and to let go of our own expectations in the temporal, and that happens to anyone. Just with age, it happens. But if you have some other ailment, it's an adjustment too. And people who have cancer, that's an adjustment. My dear friend Mary, it moves so quickly in her. She hadn't made the adjustment, and so died without talking with her children about it, or her grandchildren, or she hadn't adapted yet and didn't want to. She was still caught in the anger stage, or she was silent then, refused to speak about anything that they needed to talk about, wanted to talk about, some kind of assurance that she was okay with it. She just stayed very much on the external until she could speak no more, and then it was too late, and it's hard on that, made it all harder on her family and her grandchildren that way. But she wasn't able for whatever reason. And that was sort of stunning, because she was a very devout person, followed all the rules, all the externals. So that's why we have to push through to the interior, the spiritual life, love, and dying to self. I'm sure if she'd had a little more time, she would have come through with flying colors, with being able to discuss it and share with her family and reassure them and all. Really, our dying is for others. It's not about us. And that's true of our life, really, when we can learn that. I'm still learning it. It's not about me. Everything is all for God and others. And then last of all, for me, self-respect. So love to you all. Let us really grasp light and hang on to love, truth, beauty, and goodness in Christ's light. Lots of faith it takes. We can do it. Christ is in us, giving us all we need.